This is a packing seal replacement video for the EWM series. The tools you will need for this repair include a ratchet, a 5mm hex, 2 pry bars, a torque wrench, a soft rubber mallet, a hook tool, a round head tool, silicone packing lubricant, 2 M5 by 1mm thread positioning pins, a slide hammer part number F26019-400, an 18mm collet part number 271-24900, a low pressure seal insertion tool part number 660281, and a seal pusher tool part number 660062. Use a ratchet with a 5mm hex to remove the 8-manifold retaining bolts. Use a soft rubber mallet to separate the manifold from the crankcase. Use 2 pry bars to further separate the manifold from the crankcase. Pull the manifold off the crankcase. If the packing assembly remains on the plunger, remove the packing assembly. If the packing assembly remains on the manifold, with an 18mm collet attached to a slide hammer, remove the packing assembly from the manifold valve bore. Use a round head tool to remove the packing retainer O-ring and the low pressure seal from the packing assembly. Use a hook tool to remove the high pressure seal from the manifold valve bore. Inspect the manifold packing bore for pitting, cracking, or other damage, and replace the manifold if necessary. Inspect the O-ring, the low pressure seal retainer, and the high pressure seal. Replace any components which are a part of a replacement kit that can be found on the specification sheet. Apply silicone lubricant to the high pressure seal. Install the high pressure seal, spring side down, into the manifold valve bore. Place the insertion tool over the low pressure seal retainer. Insert the low pressure seal, spring side down, into the insertion tool and onto the low pressure seal retainer. Use the pusher tool to properly seat the low pressure seal into the retainer. Install the packing retainer O-ring onto the retainer. Apply lubricant to the O-ring and the low pressure seal packing retainer. Install the low pressure seal, seal side up, into the manifold valve bore. Use a ratchet with an 8mm socket to remove the plunger bolt and the plunger. Inspect the components. Look closely at the plunger for pitting, cracking, or other damage, and replace if necessary. Always replace the plunger bolt seal washer. Install the plunger onto the piston guide. Place the new seal washer onto the plunger bolt. Install the flinger onto the piston guide. Thread the plunger bolt into the plunger. Use a torque wrench with an 8mm socket and tighten to the specifications. Install the low pressure seal retainer washer with the shoulder side towards the crankcase. Thread the 2 positioning pins into the top 2 outer threads. Apply silicone lubricant onto the surface of the low pressure seal in the manifold packing bore. Install the manifold until it is fully seated back onto the crankcase. Install 6 of the manifold retaining bolts into the open threads. Use a 5mm hex to tighten each of the bolts in the proper order as shown in the diagram. Remove the 2 positioning pins. Thread the last 2 manifold retaining bolts. Use a ratchet with a 5mm hex to tighten the last 2 manifold retaining bolts. Use a torque wrench with a 5mm hex and tighten the bolts to the proper specifications.